Hey, are we live or is this okay? Yeah, I'll probably give it a couple minutes. Hopefully people trickle in.
Hey,
Hey,
how's it
Justin, we're using this platform for the first time, so making sure it's all set up well.
Let me know if you can hear me all right, Patryk.
Yep. Cool. Yep. Looks good. Looks good. There we go. Yeah, just gonna give it a minute or two here for people to trickle in. How's it going, Justin? I see y'all have been doing a bunch of these streams recently.
Yeah, I've been trying to make an effort to do more of these. Generally, have found that people are really happy to hear kind of directly from myself and others, as opposed to only sort of in writing.
Yeah. I'm gonna give a repost here and get started soon. All right. Here we can kick things off. How does that sound, Justin? You ready?
Sounds good. Let's do it.
Awesome. All right, everyone. My name is Patryk Krasnicki. I'm a research manager here at Messari. I've been at the company now for 2.5 years and have covered Say in my reports for 5 consecutive quarters. It's been a blast. And I'm joined with Justin Barlow, the executive director of the Say Development Foundation. Justin's background heavily features venture investment experience at Solana Labs, Faction VC, Techstars, and that experience lends itself really well with your hands on work on the ecosystem of projects that are building on Say. There's been a ton that has happened since we last spoke on stream 3 months ago, February 26th, and Messari's State of Say Q1 2025 report went out just a few weeks ago. It saw great reception, and one of the reasons for that was just how well Say has been doing. There's been awesome momentum both on the quantitative metrics side as well as qualitative developments. So, want to dive into all of that. Say improvement proposals, the Giga upgrade, the ecosystem, the foundation's recent developments. We'll be covering all that. But before we begin, just a quick disclaimer that any forward looking statements during today's conversation are for informational purposes only and not a promise of future results. So nothing we say here today is legal, financial, or tax advice. With that being said, want to start off with Say Improvement Proposals or SIPs. When I saw this announcement go live, I loved seeing it. Historically, the governance process has been a little bit mysterious. Not much public discourse on proposals or what they mean. The regular user wasn't really engaging with that side of Say, and a lot of them I assume were proposed by Say Labs. But now with SIPs and SIP one specifically, it's introducing a more formal and public process for stakeholders to get involved, create proposals, and I think it's great. For me, it indicates that the network is maturing to a level where a more diverse set of stakeholders can now participate in and impact the future of the network, at least more heavily. So we saw that recently with Solana, one of the recent SIMDs, where Multicoin Capital, a very notable investment firm and large investor in Sol, they were aiming to lower the rate of token inflation on the network. It was super contentious and a lot went into it, but overall, the level of debate that went into that I thought was a very good thing for Solana. And I imagine Say would want to get to that level of participation and debate because ultimately it means that there are stakeholders that care about the development of the network and how it's trending longer term. So why SIPs and what is actually changing from your point of view? And maybe why now? Why not 4 months ago? Why not later this year?
Yeah, well, thanks. First of all, I want to thank you for having me on and restate that, yeah, nothing here is sort of financial advice, tax advice, legal advice, et cetera, and that the views here are my own. As far as SIPs go, look, I think there is sort of a time in the evolution of any network where they reach a point of sort of sufficient decentralization, both in terms of number of users, number of participants in the network, validators active in the network, and other sort of contributors. And I think that we had seen a massive sort of evolution over the last 6 to 12 months in the Sei ecosystem, where there are more users, more developers, more sort of apps and sort of more infrastructure on the network, and it made sense to start thinking about the next evolution for the network, right? As far as governance goes, this was a proposal again that was sort of brought forward by the sort of Say Labs team, and doing that in tandem with sort of the Say Foundation, the governance organization behind the network. And really sort of serves as a pretty big milestone in the network's growth, that now we can have this ability to have contributors from across the ecosystem propose improvements, and ultimately strengthen the network and its use cases.
Yeah. Yeah. On that note, it was cool to see Silo State kind of lead the first official external stakeholder SIP with SIP 2. And are there teams was there a desire for something like this from the ecosystem for project teams to be more actively contributing on the governance side?
There was, and I think again, kind of with the growth of the network, Silo is an example of one of these teams that has been sort of a consistent contributor to the network, whether it was early on being sort of a vocal sort of evangelist for Say, or more recently the proposal of formal sort of tech upgrades to the network, and so was certainly driven in part by the desire for contributors in the ecosystem to be able to get even more involved in the future of the network.
Yeah. I liken SIP2 to what Jito has done on Solana and kind of enabling some of these off-chain auctions and REV. This is a metric that we talk about a lot at Messari, and the REV metric, the amount of revenue that the network is generating on Solana has totally exploded, and it's exciting to see Say kind of following those footsteps and hopefully get there as well. But I know SIP3 is a big one for you guys as well. Why is SIP3 significant? Shifting totally towards the EVM, deprecating some of these CosmWasm, the environment there. What are your thoughts on SIP3?
Yeah, I mean, look, if SIP3 is successfully sort of approved by the community, it will dramatically sort of streamline and improve the developer experience and the user experience on Say. Currently developers have to account for a more complex model because Say, in its current state, is sort of interoperable between CosmWasm and the EVM, which opens up some interesting opportunities, but also can create a lot of friction for EVM natives. Again, both on the developer and user side. So if SIP3 is approved, this complexity effectively disappears, and developers can build on Say in the same way that they do in any other EVM ecosystem, but just without the sort of same limitations around performance or economics, right, as far as fees go, that you see on other EVM chains today. So this was sort of a natural progression, and we saw 95% plus of the activity shifting over to the EVM post Say V2, which introduced that EVM compatibility. So sort of just a natural, progression for the ecosystem that we think makes a lot of sense over here at the Say Development Foundation, but obviously also over at Labs.
And do you feel like the community reaction has been pretty positive? I've heard the terms thrown around of just quality of life improvement, removing some technical debt. Do you feel like it'll be just a nice change for the existing teams building on Say?
Yeah, I think it will be. We've spoken to, obviously a number of developers over here at the Say Development Foundation about what their sort of biggest pain points are at the moment with Say and sort of the ecosystem. And one of the recurring themes that we saw and we hear quite often is just the complexity around COSM WASM and what that means for sort of the end developer experience and end user experience. And so this is something that I believe will be incredibly helpful in sort of reducing that friction and ultimately making Say even more attractive to builders and users.
Yeah. Another thing that's going to make Say more attractive to builders and users is the Giga upgrade. Very exciting stuff. Teams continuing to ship on the testnet side. I know you guys did a recent deep dive on Say Giga with a bunch of the folks there from Say Labs, and your focus is more on the foundation ecosystem side. So don't want to get into the nitty gritty technical details here and just focus more on the potential impact on Say and its ecosystem. So in summary, though, there's several innovations that are part of this Giga upgrade that would allow Say to reach up to 5 giga gas per second. And if that's achieved, that would kind of cement Say's foothold as being one of the highest performing blockchains in the industry. So from your perspective, assuming Say Giga launches, 5 giga gas per second is achieved, things are going great, why do you think Giga would matter on launch day, and why would it matter maybe years from now?
Yeah, I mean, look, I'm spilling the beans here a little bit, so the viewers on the stream are going to get a little bit of alpha here, but we're going to be posting, something in the way of sort of a manifesto for the Say Development Foundation. It talks a lot about this belief that sort of, new sort of explosive improvements and advancements in infrastructure unlock new possibilities that really are not possible to even conceive of without that infrastructure in place. Right. And so similarly to how, maybe someone 20 years ago wouldn't be able to fathom the idea of, something like ChatGPT or the proliferation of sort of like mobile apps and sort of the shift from PC to mobile. We believe that, next generation sort of, blockchain performance will enable new applications that maybe you and I haven't even thought of today. As far as some of the things that we do think are very much, on the horizon here, things like, advanced sort of AI networks, right? Agentic communication and payments, things like on-chain social networks and sort of fully on-chain games. Obviously, things like, very high throughput trading systems like the sort of NASDAQs, the New York Stock Exchanges of the world, but being fully on-chain. These sort of possibilities require a sort of step function improvement in the underlying infrastructure. And Say Giga is sort of looking to capture that space.
Yeah. You mentioned some of the potential uses there, agentic, or, a network of AI agents that are all transacting together at super high frequency, or maybe some of these social apps. Are there any specific apps that are looking to leverage Giga? Maybe they can't launch now, maybe they're kind of holding off, or just use cases that you're looking forward to specifically?
Yeah, I mean, without kind of sharing any teams that are sort of not yet, public or ready to be out there, one team that we've talked about before, and I think is a great example of this, is the team over at Overheard. Overheard, for those of you who are not aware, is a social app built on Say. It is built by a team that had a very strong understanding of the Web 2 social world, having been very successful in the Web 2 space with a social app that they released a few years back. And apps like this require sort of massive scale if they want to achieve their end goal, which is really to capture the sort of Web 2 audience and not just sort of the Web 3 echo chamber. One thing I always kind of say to my team internally is like, look, there's a very big difference between being viral in crypto and being viral in sort of the Web 2 world, right? Viral in crypto may mean you have a few 100,000, a few million users. Viral in Web 2 could mean you get 100 million users, practically overnight, right? And so if you want to support, applications that have on-chain components and doing that at the scale of sort of Web 2, it's really difficult to do that on any of the sort of current, infrastructure stacks that we have in crypto today. Something like, say, Giga enables a team like Overheard to really potentially scale their app to 50 million, 100 million, 200 million users without sort of sacrificing the sort of on-chain experience or sacrificing decentralization.
No. As I was thinking through Giga, I came up with an analogy that I'd be curious to hear your thoughts on. From my perspective, just as a user of Sei, the chain works great, views the apps there, and I feel that Giga wouldn't change too much from a user perspective if it launched today, just based on the apps that are live and the performance of the chain already. But the power to me comes in the future, like you say, where an upgrade like this allows applications that require very high levels of throughput and performance in order to be built, like Overheard. And it also signals to builders that this is a focus for you guys and will continue to be. So I think it kind of increases the potential of new apps coming to Sei. And it's kind of future proofing the network, kind of like a next generation upgrade from a PlayStation 2 to PlayStation 3. As a gamer, on one hand, you have competitors like Xbox who are going to do the same. They're going to make iterations and technical developments. So you see Sei doing this, Sonic has done this. And then you also have your Nintendos that are going to launch the new shiny thing, something like Mega ETH. And you better keep up in the industry. But on the other hand, as time passes, as this new tech comes out, it takes a bit of time for apps or games in this case to really start leveraging the new technologies that's now available to them. So you see this in games where PlayStation 3 comes out and gamers can't really tell too big of a difference with the game on launch, but compare that 2 years later when the games are fully taking advantage of the new tech, it's night and day. So I kind of think of it similarly for something like Sei Giga, where you look forward, say, a year from now, and there's going to be a host of applications that you either couldn't have imagined or it just took time to build some of these things.
100%. And we've already seen this sort of cycle repeat in sort of in previous iterations of this sort of step function improvement, right? If you look at Ethereum and sort of where Ethereum started with DeFi and AMMs being really the only way to transact on chain, and then you saw later chains that introduced more performance, enabling things like central limit order books. Well, then you can see kind of how this difference starts to become pretty obvious. And I think your analogy is great. As a gamer as well, can completely agree, right? When you first see the first sort of iteration of applications that come out upon new hardware dropping, sometimes it looks very similar to what you're already used to. But as time goes on, you have things that are much more sort of memory intensive or much more sort of power intensive, whatever it may be. That just purely wouldn't have been possible on the previous device. And I think we're going to see something similar unfold here in the coming months and years on Sei Network.
Yeah, very exciting stuff. Want to transition to the ecosystem side a little bit more heavily. So from my POV, the ecosystem activity has really reignited in 2025, and it's kind of started to push out through to the rest of the industry quite heavily. TVL specifically reached 363 million at the end of Q1, and that continued upwards to 500 million in the months that followed. I've been writing about the gaming ecosystem on Sei for the past couple of quarters, and that still continues to see great growth. NFTs got pretty hot just a few days ago with the launch of Ye's flagship NFT collection, Yalians. DragonSwap, the longest standing EVM protocol on Sei, just announced that the DRG token is coming soon. So a lot of great developments. The Kaito campaign as well. Everyone's talking about Sei. So it's been a fun time this year. And just a general question, what's going on in Sei's ecosystem from your eyes? What's exciting you, and how has 2025 been like?
Yeah, I mean, already 2025 has been a lot of action packed into relatively small period of time. I think what we've started to see is really the emergence of some truly dominant and sort of like category defining applications. Gaming is one area, for example, that we've seen, a tremendous amount of growth. We've seen games that are coming from Web 2 with millions of downloads being able to come over here to say, launch, products that have many sort of on-chain components, and then ultimately see, similar, if not better, results as far as user traction and retention, as well as on the sort of performance side. And that's really sort of the key here is not sacrificing the quality of your application just because you want to have a blockchain product, right? I think similarly, when you look at things like the DeFi ecosystem, you've seen a number of names like you mentioned, Yay, for example, that have really bucked the trend as far as broader market. You've seen teams like Yay be able to continue building TVL despite sort of the rest of the industry losing TVL in many cases, or at least being flat. And so being able to show this sort of divergence from the trend on Sei is really special and certainly something that we're keeping a close eye on.
Yeah, it's been awesome to see 5 quarters in a row, and every single quarter the charts are up and to the right. So it's been an exciting ecosystem to follow. As a researcher, I have a question for you that I couldn't quite answer writing the Q1 report. Saylor is a DEX that launched in January, and it rapidly took over DEX TVL as well as DEX trading volume on Sei, coming out above some of the longer term incumbents like Dragon Swap and Jellyburst. And to my knowledge, there wasn't any big points program or a big funding announcement, some catalysts that would kind of catalyze higher levels of activity. So I'm curious, and also a lot of the TVL came from Avalon and Athena-based assets, which aren't super prevalent on Sei. So from your perspective, how did Saylor achieve such a rapid rise and find this rapid
Yeah, I
success?
mean, one of the kind of beautiful things about the growth of an ecosystem is like the increasing competition, right? And so I think it's pretty natural that we see a number of apps here on Sei that have their day in the sun, dominate, and end up like facing competition from others, and sort of battling back and forth is what really strengthens the ecosystem as a whole, right? This idea of like iron sharpens iron. In the case of Saylor, I think they've done a really good job at building their own community, certainly building their sort of liquidity base, right, by interacting with relevant investors, traders, et cetera. And then ultimately, competing in terms of product, right? Offering a product that is strong, that's easy to understand, building that strong brand around it and confidence. And ultimately, competing with, some of the biggest names in the space. And so, I think that team has done a great job, building that ecosystem, building that community, and ultimately, competing with, some of these big names. And the result has been that they've been able to drive sort of significant TVL and volume growth in a short period of time.
Yeah. Tucker Lend is another one on the lending side that's kind of emerged. Hasn't quite surpassed the giant that is Yay, but definitely they've seen a great traction as well. Another project I want to call out specifically and would be curious to hear your thoughts on is Monaco, which is not live yet, but has been announced. It's an on-chain central limit order book, something you mentioned earlier that they're becoming quite popular. We have a researcher here at Messari, Sunny, who does a lot of deep dives in that niche. So Monaco came up for me. And I imagine with the launch of Giga, it will become a big focus, as I imagine that's an application that will be enabled with something like Giga. So yeah, any thoughts on Monaco?
Yeah, I mean, I think in general, we are very excited to see this use case sort of play out. It is one of the core use cases that I think people naturally gravitate to when they think about a high performance chain. In the case of sort of the Monaco team, they've done a really good job at, getting, a product moving quickly, shipping consistently. And, there's going to be, I'm sure, a number of, big updates and announcements coming in sort of the coming months, from here. But I think we're going to see sort of an explosion of competition in the central limit order book as well. And really all of that goes to benefit the users of the ecosystem, who will just have less slippage, better pricing, faster execution, et cetera.
Yeah, it's an exciting one for sure, especially with all the hype that Hyperliquid has gotten. So keen to see that one come out. Another development was Canary Capital. They came out with the staked Sei ETF filing. So pretty big development there on the institutional side, which has been an increasing focus for Sei. Any thoughts on that filing?
Yeah, I mean, look, I think it's one of these things that's, again, an exciting milestone to see in the ecosystem. It certainly shows that there is institutional interest in the network. For us, it was certainly something that we were excited to see. So, seeing things like this are just further validation that sort of we're on the right path. Think we will continue to be very excited as, you see more in the way of RWAs, tokenization plays, et cetera, launch on the chain or, around the chain, and really building our ecosystem there.
No. Integrations or partnerships have been pretty big this year as well. There's been various ones with Alchemy, Layer Zero, USDT. Um, how how do you think that has impacted the network, and are there any other things to look forward to upcoming partnerships potentially?
Yeah, I would say that there are probably three things that are impacted when you see a new relationship with something like a Alchemy or USDT. The first is sort of credibility, right? So the credibility that comes from having one of the largest names in the space support Sei, right, in its ecosystem is valuable. It certainly attracts some new eyes who may not have previously been aware of the product or the tech. Um, I would say the bigger thing though is the impact on end user experience, right? So having things like more reliable RPCs means transactions may land more reliably, right? There may be lower fees across sort of the broader network if you're seeing more efficient products, things like that. And then sort of the developer experience, right? So a number of developers have their preferences of where they want to build, especially on the EVM, which has been around for now a decade plus. People are pretty rooted in the products that they like, right? If you're used to building on Polygon or ETH mainnet or some other EVM chain, you probably have a preference for the infrastructure that you like to use. And so by kind of enabling these developers to use the products that they are most familiar with, that they know well, that they maybe even have an existing membership with or some relationship with, we're able to really unlock and enhance developer experience, and that just makes things better for everyone in the network.
Yeah. Foundation has been super active as well, on fire really with all these community programs over the last 6 to 12 months. The Say Builders campaign, Say Creators Fund, Say More campaign with Kaito. Say More one specifically has been super fun for me as a researcher, as a content creator. Love what Kaito is doing, and it's been a great match there. Um, I've seen the community come together. Like before this campaign started, um, I had a Say following. I followed various folks in Say, but I feel like this has really brought us together, and have made some friends along the way. So it's been pretty fun. Um, but one big development was the Say Development Foundation, formally creating that. It's based out of New York. How has that been like establishing, boots on the ground in the States? We're seeing some other crypto companies do that as well. How are you seeing that play out?
Yeah, I mean, I think this is one thing that has been pretty key for us in recent months and continuing to build, mindshare. Myself, I'm American. I'm born and raised in New York. And so being able to have this strong US presence is really important. We see the US as sort of one of these unique opportunities where, there's this confluence of sort of capital and talent and ideas and entrepreneurship that you really just have, in very few places elsewhere in the world at this scale. And so I think for us, being able to plant that flag and establish this sort of US presence has been, monumental. And we've already seen through our conversations with partners, through increase in users, et cetera, the impact of having that strong US presence, right?
Yeah, yeah. It's been a nice change of pace after 4 years of quite heavy scrutiny. So love to see it. And recently, the foundation did a little teaser on X, stating "Time to innovate, time to lead, time to dream again." What is this all about?
Yeah, there should be more context and information on that in sort of the coming days. But from a high level, the idea is similar to what we chatted about before, right? Where we believe that sort of breakthrough innovations on the infrastructure side beget breakthrough innovations on the application side. And so I think we will continue to see unique applications like the overheards of the world launch on Sei and really start to sort of capitalize on the distinct tech advantage that that builders have if they're building here.
Uh, what about the Say More campaign? What's your take there? Yappers are out in full force on X. Um, how has that campaign played out compared to maybe what you guys had envisioned?
Yeah, I think we've been super surprised and impressed with the results that we've seen there. Obviously, Kaido is a platform that has a lot of mind share at the moment, and been and it's been a great way for a bunch of different ecosystems to further engage with their community. In our case, I think one of the sort of more impressive things that we've seen is that a lot of the folks who are placing well on these Kaido leaderboards are not people who have been in the ecosystem for years on end and sort of have been sort of part of this echo chamber, but actually net new people who are coming into the ecosystem, learning about different products, testing out something like a Yay or a Sailor or a Dragon Swap or some of the various games, and then providing real feedback. And I think how this ecosystem continues to scale is by sort of breaking out of that echo chamber, finding ways to engage with net new people, and of course, rewarding those who have been sort of loyal to the eco and supporters from the early days.
Yeah, and being more intimately involved with some of these programs, I'm sure you worked on the Say Creator Fund, which was in partnership with Gitcoin. Kind of similar, trying to spur content creators, content on social platforms like X. How would you compare and contrast the two?
Yeah, I would say the approach to both of them is pretty different, right? When you think about something like the Say Builders Fund or the Say Creator Fund, these are sort of more targeted approaches, right? Where there's sort of like an application process. People have to, be sort of named as, participants in it at the get go, that sort of thing, right? And then people can allocate capital, as they want to, with sort of like amplified rewards coming from sponsorship from the foundation. In the case of something like Kaido, it's really anyone's game, right? And so one thing that I've always been super interested in from all the Kaido campaigns and not just those on Say is how well some of these AI agents tend to do in these campaigns, just purely based on the fact that they have large followings, and that they have the ability to tweet virtually endless amounts, right? And so if you look at sort of the Kaido leaderboard for most kind of major chains today, you'll see that there are AI agents that are ranking highly in these places. And so I think it's sort of a very different approach. One of them is sort of much more permissionless. One of them's a little bit more permissioned. But the end result is the same, which is more excitement for the ecosystem and ultimately rewarding those that are able to kind of spread the word.
Yeah, I definitely like the entrepreneurial spirit of the Kaito campaigns. You there's less friction. You can just get up and post a tweet, get better at it, and you might be rewarded for doing so. So I love it, but it is only 3 months long. Do you feel like it could be extended?
I won't give any hints there, but I will say that we're always open to thinking about ways to continuously engage with the community, whether it be through existing channels that we have or net new ones that people haven't seen before.
Yeah, sounds good. One of the final things I wanted to chat through was Sapien Capital. I know Eleanor Davies joined back in February. She's kind of leading the fund, to my understanding. In March, Say was in talks of acquiring 23andMe, ended up falling through, but exciting development nonetheless. Anything new going on as of the last couple months? Is the fund anxious to make a move? Are you guys waiting for the right opportunity?
Yeah, I mean, look, I think as far as things at sort of the scale of something like 23andMe, it's not like there are endless opportunities that it sit at that sort of scale, right, on the Web2 side. But I can say that the fund is very much active, and we've seen a number of quality projects that have had a high level of interest in Say after things like the announcement of Sapien, as well as sort of the push around 23andMe. And so, yeah, we will have some announcements coming up soon, but there have been a number of great developments happening kind of behind the scenes there. And I'm really excited about the future of the DeSci ecosystem here on Say.
Yeah, likewise, excited to see it finally play out here and have some DeFi apps coming live. But that does it for me. Is there any other alpha you'd be keen to share, or just things we didn't touch on, or is that all from you as well?
I can't share too much more, but have been really excited to continuously engage with you on these quarterly calls, and excited to keep it moving. And I would say to folks in the audience here, just be on the lookout for some exciting things that are happening on the horizon here in the Say ecosystem, both from the tech side but also the product side. And we will continue to innovate and sort of be at the forefront of some of these new ideas.
Let's go. Exciting times. That will wrap it us here for the State of Say stream with myself from Messari, as well as Justin. Appreciate you hopping on. And as always, appreciate everyone joining the call. Hope you found it insightful. And until next time.
Thanks, Patryk.
Bye.